U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered an additional 500 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. after 2 West Virginia National Guard members were shot a few blocks from the White House. This as officials confirmed that the suspect was taken into custody. Reacting within minutes, Donald Trump, in a stern address, has called it an act of evil, hatred and terror. He's now ordered the immediate mobilization of 500 additional troops to the nation's capital, vowing to make America totally safe again. But you know what's fueling the political firestorm meanwhile, though, is Donald Trump's sharp indictment of the Biden-era immigration policies, because he says this foreign national who's a suspect was flown into America by the previous Biden administration. Listen in to the US president's latest remarks.
My great fellow Americans, earlier today, on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, 2 members of the National Guard serving in Washington, D.C., were shot at point-blank range in a monstrous ambush-style attack just steps away from the White House. They had been deputized as part of the most successful public safety and national security mission in the history of our nation's capital, the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, which has achieved an unprecedented reduction in violent crime and crimes of all type. This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against humanity. The hearts of all Americans tonight are with those 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard and their families. The love of our entire country is pouring out for them, and we are lifting them up in our prayers. As we are filled with anguish and grief for those who were shot, we're also filled with righteous anger and ferocious resolve. As President of the United States, I am determined to ensure that the animal who perpetrated this atrocity pays the steepest possible price. I can report tonight that, based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden, a disastrous president, the worst in the history of our country. This attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't want to even know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival. An example is Minnesota, where hundreds of thousands of Somalians are ripping off our country and ripping apart that once great state. Billions of dollars are lost, and gangs of Somalians come from a country that doesn't even have a government, no laws, no water, no military, no nothing. As their representatives in our country preach to us about our Constitution and how our country is no good. We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. And at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission these service members were so nobly fulfilling. That is why tonight I can announce that I have directed the Department of War to mobilize an additional 500 troops to help protect our capital city. We will make America totally safe again, and we will bring the perpetrator of this barbaric attack to swift and certain justice if the bullets going in the opposite direction haven't already done that. During this time of the year, when we gather at home with loved ones, these two patriots were wearing the uniform of our country, patrolling the streets of our capital. They had taken a selfless oath to defend our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that is exactly what they were doing when they were gunned down in a savage attack. I want to express my extraordinary gratitude to every member of the United States military who is deployed tonight at home and abroad. I also want to thank the Secret Service and the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department for their work today. This Thanksgiving, I ask every family to say a prayer for the two great heroes who were so horribly shot, and for their loved ones. Please say a prayer. May God bless them and comfort them, and may God bless and protect the United States of America.
Well, two West Virginia National Guardsmen who were shot near the White House are in critical condition, U.S. officials are saying. Meanwhile, the mayor described the attack as a targeted shooting. Here are all the crucial reactions you need to listen to.
White House just a couple of hours ago, and we're still learning everything. We still don't know the motive. There's a lot that we haven't yet figured out, but what we do know is that a couple of National Guardsmen were injured in the line of duty. And first of all, I want everybody who's a person of faith to say a prayer for those two National Guardsmen, that they're able to spend Thanksgiving with their families instead of losing their lives, because I understand they're still in pretty tough condition.
Two of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, President Trump has been informed. We've been in contact with the White House. We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice.
My colleague Priyanka Deo joins us with the latest details at this point. Priyanka, it's now confirmed that the suspect is a 29-year-old Afghan national who entered the U.S. in 2021 as part of a Biden-era program?
Yeah, it was carried out. He was 29 years old, Afghan national Ramanullah Lakhanwal. It's a very vivid example of what experts have warned about since 2021. And this is across the board. It's not really a Democrat-Republican issue. The Biden administration's mass admissions of Afghan evacuees were rushed. They were weakly vetted. They were structurally flawed. Approximately 80,000 people came in after the fall of Kabul. So, if he entered during this time, then this incident directly touches the humanitarian parole program, which is what they called it, under which these 80,000 Afghans were brought in with incomplete documentation, incomplete identities, and in many cases, no verifiable records at all because the Afghan state had collapsed. So multiple Inspector General reports later confirmed what insiders already knew here, that biometric checks were rushed, screening was abbreviated, and thousands were admitted before full security clearance. So that was the price of speed, but the bigger flaw was what happened after arrival, or rather what didn't happen. So following up this vetting, secondary interviews, rescreening, and long-term monitoring were supposed to continue as the files were verified. Instead, the system lost track of many of these evacuees entirely. So the U.S. never fully confirmed many identities, never validated the missing documents, never created uniform oversight mechanisms. And now you have a man who carried out an ambush-style attack on a National Guard troop just blocks outside the White House, raising the exact question that Americans have been quietly asking for years, that who exactly entered this country under the Biden era's rushed evacuation. So it's already triggered a massive federal response, including deployment of, as you said, the additional 500 National Guard members to D.C. But that only underscores the core issue, which is a security gap at the border or in vetting eventually becomes a security incident on ground domestically and at home. So it's not really about stigmatizing Democrats or Republicans, but it's about acknowledging a policy failure and lack of follow-up. The Biden administration did promise at the time rigorous multi-layered checks, which never happened, and today's evidence of that.
As far as this investigation is concerned, though, Priyanka, are investigators revealing anything about the suspect's background, his movements, and whether he acted alone, or is it too early at this stage?
He did act alone. That was confirmed. He's 29 years old, as I said before. He was actually shot by responding officers and taken into custody with non-life-threatening injuries. He reportedly acted alone. That's not officially confirmed. No second suspect, though, has been identified at all. Early reports indicate that he did enter the U.S. in 2021, and the motive is still unknown. So investigators have not labeled it officially as terrorism as of right now. There's no manifesto, communications, or organizational ties that have been publicly or officially released. Officials have not provided any details either about the suspect's background beyond his immigration status.